In this video, we'll be taking a look at the materials in Cinema 4D, how to create them, how to apply them, and then we look at the different types of materials we can create in Cinema 4D R25. So by default, the material column is hidden, but this icon here, right here, this material manager, when you click it, it will toggle the palette, the window of the materials here. Okay, and you can double click to create a default Cinema 4D material, or you click this plus icon here to create it, or you can go to the create menu here, create, and then materials, and then you can select the new standard material. This is the new PBR materials that comes with Cinema 4D R25, but we're going to use the standard material here. Okay, so this is the material. Now I have other render engines installed. That's why you see them here. I have V-Ray, Corona, and other. But with you, because you don't have any render engines installed, you're just going to see the default create cinema view and then this Cinema 4D menus. Okay, but never mind my menu system. I have them installed, but you're not going to use it. These are more advanced render engines. Okay. Okay, so this is basically the material. This is the material. Okay, so let's create some objects so we can apply them to. Let's create a cube. Okay, let's move it here. Let's create a sphere. Move it here. Let's create the platonic. Move it here. And let's create another one, maybe a tube. Okay, and just move it here. Okay, so we have these objects in Cinema 4D. Okay, with a cube, let's give it a little bit of fillet, so we can have this kind of. Okay, with a sphere, let's increase it to maybe 36, so we get a bit more. And with a tube, let's also give it a fillet of 3. Okay, it's okay. So this is what we have. Let's talk about the types of materials you can create. When you double click on the material itself, you have this material editor window shown up. When you look at this side, you see we have the color. That is the basic color. That's the color of the material. Okay, you can change the color to the color that you want. So that's basically the color of the material. Okay. Okay, and the next one we have the luminance. The luminance is an emission. It's a form of animation, a light material. Okay, so when you select it, you see that material has changed to something that's emitting light. Okay, we can also change the emission strength and the color. Okay, the strength is the brightness. Okay, so 0 you don't have any emission, and then 100 you have full emission. Okay, and also something called transparency. Now in previous versions of Cinema 4D, it was called refraction. Okay, so when we check this, it creates a transparency. So this is where, if you want to create a glass material, this is where you come. Okay, when you check it, okay, by default the refraction preset is glass. When you click, we have other presets that is inside. Okay, that you can choose, and the presets, what it does is it assigns the right refraction of index to the refraction, and the refraction of index is something to do with physics. Okay, every object in the world has its refraction of index. You can Google the refraction of index of objects and you can find it. And I know for glass it's 1.5. For glass, the refraction index for glass is 1.5. Sometimes it's 1.54, sometimes it's 1.51, but it's inside a 1.5 range. Okay, and we have reflectance. Reflectance is actually reflections inside your material. So by default, we have the default specular. Let's disable the transparency. So we have the reflectance. We have the default specular. It just gives you this. You see this specular hotspot here. Okay, if you disable the reflectance, you see there's no hotspot here, but if you enable it, you see we have this kind of specular. It's a light that is being reflected there. Okay, now there's a difference between the default specular and a normal reflection. Okay, so let's just remove, let's hide this by clicking, and let's add another layer. So we have the types of layer. We have Beckman is an engine that can deal with the reflections. We also have GNSS, Fung, and Ward. They are all engines, but the best accurate ones is Beckman and GNGX. So I'll use Beckman, and you see how the reflection is. So now our material is like a chromium material. Okay. When you enable the specular, it's there, but it's under it. Okay, Let's just keep it disabled. So with the layer selected, with the GGS layer, this is another reflection layer added to this thing. When you come to the layer Fresnel, this is where you can tell Cinema 4D what kind of reflection are you looking for. We have metals, which is a conductor, okay, and we have other surfaces, which is dielectric, okay. So if you choose dielectric, it will use the color of your object, okay, here, and then we'll add the reflections on top of it, okay. And then if you use conductor, this is mostly used for metal products, okay. So it will add the reflection, but in the form of a chromium way, like a metal, how metals work. And most of the times when you're using a conductor, you don't need a color, because most metals doesn't really have colors, unless the metal that you are dealing with has color and you add some metallic reflection to it, okay. So let's go back and change it to dielectric. And when you change it to dielectric, we have also some presets. We have asphalt, BA, diamond, emerald, glass. So these are all dielectric materials. But when you change it to conductor, then it changes. You see, you have aluminum, chromium, copper. So these are all metal materials, like the bauxite, the silver, those kind of things. So when you choose silver, you see it gives you that silver look. Okay, so that is all about the reflectance. So let's come to the bump. The bump is another way of faking displacement, okay, and it needs a black and white texture to create a bump on it. So let's add a texture. We can load in a black and white image, or we can let's use noise, okay. So you see, as we use the noise, let's enable the reflection, so you will see what I'm looking at. Let's change it back to dielectric. Okay, so with a bump, because we are using the noise is just a black and white image here, okay. We can change the seed of it. We can even change the scale. So let's go, if it's 20 by 20 by 20, okay. Now it's a little bit smaller, okay. So you see, let's make it huge, so you see the difference, okay. So that is basically what the bump is for. It's creating bump maps, okay. We use this bump map to create bumps on the surface of that object, okay. And we have normal. Normal does the same thing, but it doesn't physically create the bumps, okay. It uses something we call a normal map. A normal map to create that fake bump inside your materials, okay. And then we have the alpha. Alpha is basically transparency. So if you want to apply a texture, like a label texture, that is on top of another material, use the alpha to set the alpha of that image, so that the transparency of that image will be maintained, okay. And we have the glow. It just adds some sort of glow, okay, light glow around your material, okay. And we have the displacement. This is not the same thing as the bump material, but this is actually heavy, okay. This gives you a better representative of your texture, the same as a displacer deformer, okay. This displacement here creates a displacement material that you can put on your object, and you will see the deformer of that object only when you render it, okay. So it's the same. Let's just choose same as the noise. So you see, it does the same thing as the bump, okay, but the displacement column in this texture is used to displace objects during render time, okay. And it's far more physically accurate than the bump. So the bump and the normal map does almost like a fake kind of displacement, but when you want really realistic displacement, use the displacement channel here on your material, okay. So let's create some materials and assign them to this object, okay. So let's delete this one we just created, and then we want to create some materials for this cube. So for this cube, I want to make it a gold cube, like a metal gold, okay. So I'll double click here to create one material and call it gold, okay. And then the way to assign materials onto an object is you drag it onto the object inside the object manager here, or the hierarchy window, or you drag it onto the object in your viewport here, and it will assign the material onto that object that you want to assign it. So let's double click on this material and make it gold. So we don't want the color. With the reflectance, I want it to be, I don't want the default specular, so I will remove it, and I'll add a Beckman, okay, here. And then I'll come to the layer Fresnel down here and change it to conductor, and then I can choose a preset of gold. So I have a gold material right here, okay. So I'm done with the gold material here. So when you render, you have the gold, but nothing is really there for the gold to reflect. Okay, so let's create a floor. So let's create a plane. Let's make it big like this and bring it down like this. Okay, so now when you hit render, you see we have something that's this cube is, this gold cube is reflecting. So you now see the reflections inside the cube. Okay, so let's create a light to give let's create an Arial light, and let's change the shadow to Arial. Okay, let's put it somewhere here. Okay, something like this. Something like this is okay. That's it. Okay, now we have this light, and let's create another light. Okay, let's create this light and let's put it here. Let's give it a intensity of 50 so that it balances with this. Okay. Okay, now we have something we can work with. Okay, so the next material we're going to create is a diffuse material. Okay. Okay, so I don't want any reflectance on it. I just want the color, and I want to change the color to somewhere like this deep red. Okay, so this is a diffused material. It only uses the color channel. Okay, so the color, and let's put it on this sphere. Okay, so when we hit render, you see we have this material, red material assigned to the sphere. Okay, let's create another material. So this will be the platonic. Okay, this will be assigned to this. Okay, and let's make this a little bit of the color. Let's give it something like this, and then let's give it a reflectance. I don't want the specular. I want to remove the specular. I want to add a Beckham GGS, change it to dielectric. Okay, so that we have this kind of, okay, so it's now it has a reflection on it. Okay, so when you render, you see, you won't see it well, but it's there. It has reflections on it. Okay, and then the last one is what we want to use the transparency channel. So this will be our glass. Okay, let's put it on the tube. We open it with glass. We don't need the color. We need a reflectance, and then we need a transparency. By default, it's a glass, so we just maintain it because we need the glass on it. Okay, and then okay, so you see, because we've applied glass on this one, it's transparent now. That's why it's being demonstrated like that inside our viewport. Okay, so when you hit render, this is what we have. So we have your metallic material, you have your diffuse, which is the color, you have your reflection material, which has a little bit of reflections on it, and we have the glass material. This is the refraction, okay, now called the transparency material. We have another material called the emission material. So with that, let's create another object. So let's create a sphere here, and then let's move it in front of this one. Let's make it a little bit smaller like this. Okay. And then let's create a new material. Remember, double click and then a new material will come. This is a default standard material in Cinema 4D. So let's call it the emission, which is also the luminance. Okay, so we don't need color, we don't need reflectance, we need the luminance. Okay, so you can change the color of it, but for now let's maintain white. So when you put it on this object, this is now a luminance object. It's an object that is casting light. Okay, so you can use it to create light bulbs and other stuff. So when you hit render, you see you have the light. It's a material assigned to an object, and it's an emission material, so it just light. Okay, so this is all about the material system in Cinema 4D. Thank you, and see you in the next video.